The bell above the door chimed. Nobody looked up. A man stood in the middle of the shop. Frayed collar. One button missing, where a thread had given up years ago. 6 people in line behind him. 6 pairs of eyes, all of them finding somewhere else to look. Behind the counter, a laugh. Short. Sharp. Cut off before it could turn into anything worse. He didn't answer it. He just set his cash down on the counter. The change came back dropped, not handed. 3 coins rolled across the sticky laminate. He bent down and picked them up, one by one, while the whole line watched, and nobody said a word. The espresso machine hissed, long and low. Every cup that left that counter carried a line of writing on it. Nobody read it. Nobody remembered who wrote it. He sat at the corner table. Bit into a slice of banana bread. And then he froze mid-bite, because behind the counter, when they thought no one was listening, they started talking. The bell above the door did not announce him. It only marked the moment everything changed. Desmond Whitfield stood at the counter of his own coffee shop, and nobody looked up. Not really. A glance, maybe. The kind you give a stray dog wandering too close to the patio tables. He wore a jacket pulled from the back of his closet that morning. Collar frayed. One button missing, where a thread had given up years ago. No watch. No car waiting outside. Just a man in worn boots, standing where 6 other people stood in line, and every one of those 6 people had somewhere else to look. The cashier's name tag said Brianna. Bright eyes. Sharp jaw. The kind of smile that could switch on and off like a light. It had already switched off the second she clocked his jacket. "Yo," she said. Not to him. To the girl beside her. Loud enough for the whole store. Did this dirty man just walk in here like he owns the place? A laugh. Quick and ugly. Cut off before it could turn into anything more. Because that was the thing about small cruelty. It never announced itself either. It slipped in sideways. Dressed as a joke. Dressed as nothing at all. "Order or get out," Brianna said. Desmond kept his voice level. Kept it low. The way a man keeps a hand steady when everything inside him wants to shake. "A quarter-do, please." She barked a laugh. Sharp. Practiced. A quarter-do? You don't even know what that is. Her head turned, just enough. "Get your black coffee, and go sit on the curb, where you belong." A voice from behind the register. Not Brianna's. "Look at him. Dude crawled out of a trash can." A pause, the kind that lets cruelty breathe, before it lands. Bet that card's stolen. 6 people in line. Not one of them opened their mouth. He paid in cash. He sat down. He bit into a slice of banana bread, and he froze mid-bite. Not because of what they'd said to his face. He'd heard worse than that his whole life, just for existing in rooms like this one. Rooms with white tablecloths, and green aprons, and prices printed in careful script. He'd built a callus for that kind of thing decades ago. He froze because of what they said next. When they thought nobody was listening. 23 years is a long time to remember the smell of a garage. But Desmond remembered it exactly. Motor oil and sawdust. Cold concrete under his knees. The particular blue of a welding flame at 2 in the morning, the only light in the whole house still burning. He was 29 that year. Broke in the way that makes a man superstitious about counting his own money too closely. Stubborn in the way that makes a mother worry more than she lets on. His mother, Odessa, used to take him downtown when he was a boy. There was a cafe on the corner with a green awning and a bell above the door, not so different from the one he'd build for himself one day, though he didn't know that yet. The waitress there had a system. Regulars by the window. Everyone else by the kitchen door, where the swinging hinge banged every few minutes, and the smell of dishwater hung low, over every table nearby. Desmond and his mother always sat by the kitchen door. He remembered asking her once, 7 years old, and too honest for his own good, why they never got the window. She'd smiled at him the way mothers smile, when they're protecting a child, from something too big for him to carry yet. Because the window's not for us today, baby, she said. Doesn't mean it never will be. He promised himself something that day. He didn't have the words for it yet. Just a feeling, hot and stubborn, lodged somewhere behind his ribs. If he ever built something of his own, there would be no kitchen door. Everyone would get the window seat. 22 years later, he welded that promise into a steel cart in his mother's garage, one bad weld at a time, because he couldn't afford to pay someone who actually knew what they were doing. The cart became a storefront. The storefront became 5. 5 became 40, spread across Colorado, and Utah and New Mexico, a chain known for its seasonal menu, and its hand-roasted beans, and a motto stamped on every cup that left the counter. Everyone deserves a seat. He'd written that line himself, the year he opened his first real store. He'd thought about his mother when he wrote it. About the window. About the door that swung and banged and smelled like dishwater. He didn't know, back then, that a line like that could survive on a cup and die everywhere else in the building. The corner office on the 14th floor had a view most men would have killed for. Glass on 2 sides. Denver laid out below like something you could hold in your palm, if you just reached far enough. Behind Desmond's desk hung a photograph. Black and white, slightly crooked, because he liked it that way. A young man in his 20s standing beside a steel cart, grinning like he'd just built something that mattered. Which he had. The wood in the photo was still stained, with old espresso, dark rings soaked into the grain, and Desmond hadn't touched an espresso machine in 3 years. Hadn't walked into one of his own stores, as anything but a name on a letterhead. He told himself he didn't need to. The numbers were good. Revenue up 11%. New locations opening in Albuquerque and Salt Lake City. The board was happy. The investors were happy. Which should have meant something. Except it didn't. Not really. Not the way it used to. His assistant, Doug Preston, walked in on a Tuesday morning, and dropped a folder on the desk like it weighed more than it looked. "You need to read these," Doug said. "Today." Inside were 31 printed reviews. Glassdoor. Denver flagship. The original store. The first real one. The one Desmond had built, with money borrowed, from his mother's retirement fund, before any investor had said yes to anything, back when yes was a word that scared him more than no. He read the first 3, and felt his stomach drop. The cashiers looked at me like I was trespassing in my own city. I'm a 58-year-old woman. The girl at the register spoke to me like I was a stray dog. I will never go back. Hostile. Humiliating. I left my coffee on the table, and walked out. Didn't even want it anymore. He kept reading. 31 reviews. 22 of them mentioned the same thing. Not the coffee. Not the prices. Not the food. The staff. The way certain customers were treated differently than others. Words repeated across the reviews like a drumbeat. Unwelcome. Ignored. Disrespected. Embarrassed. He pulled up the internal dashboard on his monitor. Customer satisfaction score, flagship location. Dead last. Out of 40 stores. Dead last. The store he'd built first. The one with his mother's fingerprints all over the loan papers. Now the worst performing location in the entire company. He picked up the phone and called the store manager. A man named Derek Ford. 2 years on the job. Decent enough, on paper. Derek. I'm looking at the glass door numbers for your store. Walk me through what's going on. Derek's voice came back smooth. Practiced. The voice of a man who'd rehearsed an answer before the question was even asked. Mr. Whitfield, with all due respect. People leave bad reviews when they don't get free refills. It's noise. My team is solid. We're hitting our sales targets. Your customer sat score is dead last, Derek. Sir, satisfaction surveys are subjective. We can't control how people feel. Desmond paused. He knew that tone. He'd used it himself once, a long time ago, back when he was 29, and terrified and still learning how to sound like a man who had answers. I hear you, Derek. Appreciate your time. He hung up. Sat there a long time, staring at the phone like it might ring back with something truer. That night, he drove to the flagship store alone. Parked across the street. Killed the engine. 9:15. Closing time. Through the glass he could see 2 young women behind the counter. One wiping down the espresso machine, slow, half-hearted. The other on her phone, leaning against the register like the register was the only thing holding her up. A customer walked in. A man in work boots, a paint-stained shirt. Desmond watched. The cashier on her phone didn't look up. Didn't greet him. The man stood at the counter for nearly a full minute, before anyone acknowledged he existed. Desmond gripped the steering wheel, until his knuckles ached. 40 locations. Thousands of employees. And the one store, that was supposed to represent everything he believed in, the original, the first, the flagship, was rotting from the inside out. He pulled out his phone. Opened the employee schedule for the flagship. 14 names. 2 of them appeared on every high-traffic shift, week after week, like a pattern too consistent to be coincidence. Brianna Cole. Kayla Price. A third name caught his eye. Sophia Reyes. Scheduled only for 5 a.m. openings and 10 p.m. closings. The dead zones. Every single week. He stared at that name a long time. Then he started the car. Something was wrong inside his own house. And he was going to find out what. The next morning, Desmond Whitfield did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He got dressed like a nobody. Worn jacket from the back of the closet. Old baseball cap, brim soft from age. No watch. He left the Omega on the bathroom counter, the crystal catching the morning light, and it felt strange to leave it, like taking off a piece of armor he'd forgotten he was wearing. No car service. He took the bus. 14 stops down Colfax Avenue, the city sliding past the window in slow gray sections, and then he walked 2 blocks to the Denver flagship of his own company. The store he'd built with borrowed money. The store where he'd poured the first cup himself, and handed it to a stranger for free, just to see the look on someone's face, when a thing they didn't expect turned out to be good. He pushed the door open. The bell chimed. Nobody looked up. Which told him everything, before he'd said a single word. Brianna Cole stood behind the register, phone in one hand, the other resting flat on the counter like she was guarding it from something. Kayla Price stood at the espresso machine, scrolling through her own phone, a towel draped over her shoulder, that she clearly hadn't used in a while. Desmond stepped to the counter. Stood there. 5 seconds. 10. 15. A young white couple walked in behind him. Brianna's head snapped up instantly, bright smile blooming across her face like a switch had been flipped. Hey guys, welcome to Ember and Oak. What can I get started for you? She took their order around him. Through him. Like he was a pillar. Like he was furniture the store had forgotten to remove. The couple got their drinks. They sat down. Brianna went back to her phone. Desmond cleared his throat. "Excuse me. I'd like to order." Brianna looked up. Her eyes traveled, from his cap to his jacket to his shoes. Slow. Deliberate. The way someone scans something they've already decided to throw away. "What do you want?" Not a question. A verdict. "A cortadou, please. And a slice of banana bread." Brianna tilted her head toward Kayla. "A cortadou," she said. "He wants a cortadou." Kayla snorted without looking up. Brianna turned back to him, speaking slowly now, the way adults speak to children, who aren't theirs. "Sir. Do you know what a cortadou is? Or do you just want a regular black coffee? Keep it simple." Desmond felt the heat climb his neck. He kept his voice level anyway. Because that was the only thing he had left in that moment. The only thing that was still his. "I know what a cortadou is. I'd like one, please." Brianna shrugged. Punched it into the register. Didn't ask his name. Just scribbled 2 letters on the cup. BC. He didn't ask what it stood for. He already knew. He paid cash. Brianna took the bills, with 2 fingers, like she was pulling a receipt off a wet floor, and dropped his change on the counter instead of, into his hand. 3 coins rolled. He picked them up, one by one, off the sticky laminate, while the line behind him watched, and said nothing. He took his cup, and the banana bread to a corner table. Sat down. The cortadou was lukewarm. The banana bread was good. Actually, it was excellent, the best thing on the menu, and he hadn't even known it existed, until right now. He took a bite. And that's when he heard it. Kayla leaned across the register toward Brianna. She didn't lower her voice. Didn't even glance in his direction, as if he wasn't worth the effort of discretion. "Yo, did you see him count those coins off the counter? That was painful." Brianna laughed. "I don't know why people like that come in here. This isn't a shelter." A pause, sharp as a blade. "Or go to McDonald's. He's just going to sit there all day. Take up a table. Buy 1 coffee. Never tip. They never do." Another laugh, thinner this time. "At least he didn't bring his whole family. Last week that one woman brought 3 kids. 3. Let them run around like animals. I told Derek, if we don't start filtering, this place is going to look like a bus station." Kayla nodded. "For real. We need to protect the vibe. Some people just don't fit the brand, you know." Desmond set the banana bread down. His hand was steady. His jaw was not. He stared at the table. A coffee ring stained the wood, probably weeks old. Nobody had wiped it. Nobody had thought it mattered. He pulled out his phone. Opened the Notes app. Typed 1 word. Rot. Then he sat there another 45 minutes. Watched. Listened. Saw Brianna greet every young, well-dressed customer with a smile, and a "Hey babe." Saw her hand a middle-aged black man his drink, without a word, without eye contact, the exchange as cold, as a transaction at a toll booth. Saw Kayla turn away, from an elderly woman mid-sentence to take a selfie. He finished his cortadou. Left the cup on the table. Walked out. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody said thank you. Nobody even noticed he'd left. Desmond stood on the sidewalk outside his own store. The store with his motto stamped on every cup. Everyone deserves a seat. He pulled out his phone, and called Doug Preston. "Doug. Clear my schedule for next week. All of it. Desmond, you've got the investor lunch on Thursday. All of it, Doug. A pause on the line. Doug's voice, careful now. What's going on? I'm going back in. Not as corporate. Not as the founder. As nobody. Desmond looked back at the storefront, at the green awning, at the bell he could still hear ringing somewhere behind his eyes. And I need you to make sure not a single person in that building knows. That night, Desmond didn't sleep. He sat in his apartment, a modest two-bedroom in Capitol Hill, small for a man who owned 40 stores, though he'd never wanted the kind of house that announced itself. He replayed every second. The eye roll. The two-finger bill grab. The coins dropped on the counter instead of placed in his hand. BC scrawled on a paper cup like it was easier than a name. The word filtering. The laughter that wasn't meant to be funny. It was meant to be a wall. He'd spent 52 years on the other side of walls like that one. He thought he'd built a company that didn't have them. He was wrong. And being wrong, at his age, in his own name, on the thing he'd built, with his own hands, felt like something breaking quietly in a room nobody else could hear. At 6 a.m, he called Doug again. I need a cover. New hire. Transfer trainee from the Springs location. Name in the system, Henry Walsh. Can you build that? Doug exhaled, long and slow, the sound of a man doing math on risk in real time. Desmond, I can have legal and HR handle this in 48 hours. Pull the tapes. Fire the 2 cashiers. Done. If I fire 2 cashiers, I fix one problem. I want to know if the whole house is sick, Doug. Silence on the line. How long? 4 days. And if someone recognizes you? Desmond almost laughed. Almost. I just spent an hour in my own store yesterday. The woman behind the register looked me dead in the eye, and told me to sit on the curb. He shook his head, even though Doug couldn't see it. Trust me. Nobody in that building has ever looked at the About page. He spent the next 2 hours preparing. Trimmed his beard shorter, uneven, the way a man looks when he doesn't own a mirror he likes. Drove to a thrift store on Colfax, and bought a gray polo, dark jeans, work shoes scuffed at the toe, from someone else's long day. Then he sat at his kitchen table, and printed the employee handbook, all 40 pages, and read it start to finish for the first time in 2 years. What he found made him sit back in his chair. The customer experience protocol was detailed. Specific. Greeting standards, service timelines, complaint resolution procedures, all written out in careful corporate language, that someone, somewhere, had clearly worked hard on. But there was no enforcement mechanism. No audits. No anonymous reporting channel, that didn't run straight through the same regional office, that was supposed to be catching problems like this one. The entire protocol relied on a single assumption. That people would follow it, because it was right. Desmond closed the handbook. Thought about his mother, the particular way she used to fold her hands, when she was about to say something true and unwelcome. Good intentions don't survive bad management, baby. She was always right. It irritated him a little, even now, how right she'd always been. He pulled up the flagship shift schedule one more time. Brianna Cole and Kayla Price, every peak shift, Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The golden hours. The hours when the tips were fat, and the traffic was heavy, and a person could build a small, quiet kingdom behind a register, if nobody was watching closely enough. Sophia Reyes, 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., then 9 p.m. to close. Every week. 4 months straight. The earliest mornings and the latest nights. No peak hours. No visibility. No tips worth counting. 4 months of dead zone shifts wasn't bad luck. That was a pattern. Desmond put on the gray polo, laced the scuffed shoes, stood in front of the bathroom mirror, and studied the man looking back at him. The man in the mirror didn't look like the CEO of a 40-store chain. He looked like exactly the kind of person Brianna Cole would tell to sit on the curb. Good, he thought. That's exactly who I need to be. He drove to the flagship, and parked in the alley behind it, where the dumpsters sat, and the pavement was cracked in long veins. The employee entrance was a narrow metal door, paint chipping at the edges, no camera mounted anywhere near it. The difference between the Instagram perfect storefront out front, and this neglected back door told him everything he needed to know about, where the company's attention had gone, and where it hadn't. The break room smelled like stale coffee, and microwave popcorn left too long in the machine. A corkboard cluttered, with shift notices, curling at the corners. And on a shelf in the corner, wedged between a stack of napkins, and a bottle of sanitizer, a ceramic tip jar. Hand-painted, sunflowers on one side, the Ember and Oak logo on the other, done with something that looked, unmistakably, like love. Nearly empty. Taped to the front, a sticky note in bubbly handwriting. All tips go through Brianna. See her before adding to jar. Desmond photographed the note. Set the jar back down. Gently. The way you set down something you already suspect is evidence. He clocked in as Henry Walsh. And he walked out onto the floor. Day 1. Morning shift. Desmond was assigned to shadow the opening crew, and the shift lead was Sophia Reyes. 28 years old. Hair pulled back tight, apron already stained by 5:15 in the morning. She moved behind the counter the way musicians move on stage. No wasted motion. Every step deliberate. Pulled shots. Steamed milk. Restocked cups. Wiped the bar in a continuous loop, that never seemed to break, like the counter itself was something she was protecting. To her, he was Henry. The new transfer. The one who didn't know where the lids were. Lids are under the second sink. Not the first. She didn't look up when she said it. First sink is sanitizer. Mix those up, you'll taste bleach in your espresso for a week. At 6:40, an elderly black man walked in. Tall. Slow-moving. A wool coat too heavy for the season, the kind a man wears, because it belonged to someone he misses. Sophia's face softened instantly. Otis. Oat milk cordido, extra warm. He smiled at her like she'd handed him something he thought he'd lost for good. You remember. Every day for 3 years. She was already moving toward the machine. Sit down. I'll bring it over. She carried the cup to his table, with both hands, the way you carry something you don't want to spill. Sophia, Otis said. You're the only reason I still come here. She smiled. It didn't quite reach her eyes. She went back to work. Desmond waited for a gap between customers. How long have you been here? 4 years. You like it? A long pause. Her hands kept moving. Wiping. Sorting. Never still. I like the coffee. That pause told Desmond more than any Glassdoor review ever could. At 10 o'clock, the shift changed. Brianna and Kayla walked in, and the air in the store tightened, like someone had reached over and turned a dial nobody could see. Sophia went quiet. Moved to the back without being told. Started restocking shelves that didn't need it. Brianna didn't greet her. Did you pre-stock the oat milk? I'm not doing it again. It's done. It better be. And just like that, like flipping a switch, Brianna became a different person entirely. A young white couple walked in, and she lit up like a marquee. Hey guys. Have you tried the Harvest Maple Cordido? Literally the best thing we've ever made. Desmond blinked. The Harvest Maple Courtadou. He knew, from the quarterly numbers, that it was the third best seller in the entire chain. He didn't know who had created it. He hadn't thought to ask, not once, in 3 years of glancing at reports, from a glass office 14 floors above all of this. A middle-aged woman in a cleaning uniform approached the register next. Brianna's smile vanished, flat and sudden, like a curtain dropping. "What do you want?" She made the drink without another word. "Set it down." No name on the cup. No "have a nice day." Desmond opened the register drawer to make change for a customer of his own, and inside, wedged between the receipt paper and the bill tray, he found a folded index card. 2 columns. One marked with hearts. One marked with X's. He didn't read it yet. Just felt his stomach tighten, and closed the drawer, and kept moving, because there would be time. There would be too much time, before this was over. Day 2. Desmond waited until Brianna went on break, then pulled the card out, and read it properly, standing behind the register, with his heart doing something strange and heavy in his chest. Hearts. Tech guy Jake, always tips 5. Instagram girl at Molly Brew, tags us, free extra shot. Blonde couple, good vibe. X's. Old guy Otis, just sits, nurses 1 drink. Lady with 3 kids, messy, don't encourage. And then, near the bottom, 3 words that stopped his breath cold. Flannel man. Doesn't fit. Flannel man. That was him. From 2 days ago, the day he'd walked in, as a customer, and left his change spread across the counter, coin by coin. They'd written him down. Put an X next to the man who built everything he was standing inside of. On the back of the card, in Brianna's handwriting, small and neat, and matter-of-fact, like a business memo, like this was simply how things were done. If they're not brand fit, slow service, they'll leave on their own. Don't make a scene. Just make it clear they're not welcome. Desmond put the card back exactly where he'd found it. His hands were steady. His jaw was not. This wasn't 2 young women having a bad day. This was a system. Someone had built it. Someone had taught it. And someone else had let it run for months, without a single audit catching it. In the break room, later that day, Sophia pulled out a small spiral notebook during her afternoon break. Pages of recipes, seasonal drinks, pastry twists, flavor notes scrawled in the margins. Needs more cinnamon. Try with brown sugar syrup. She stopped on 1 page. The Harvest Maple Courtadou. You created this, Desmond said. She nodded. Gave it to Derek last fall. He said he'd submit it through regional. A shrug, small and practiced, like she'd made peace with it a long time ago. It went on the menu. Sold like crazy. Your name on it? No. Derek listed it as his own initiative. She turned more pages. Autumn spice latte. Peach honey iced tea. Banana pecan bread. All hers. All credited, somewhere up the chain, to someone else. I stopped writing my name on them, she said, and closed the notebook. What's the point? Desmond typed a note under the table, out of sight. Sophia Reyes. For recipes confirmed. 0 credit. 0 raise. Which meant Derek wasn't just a manager who ignored bad reviews. Derek was the first hand in a chain of hands, passing something that wasn't his to pass, and Desmond filed that thought away too, because it wasn't finished growing yet. Day 3. He smelled Gary Bennett before he saw him. Cologne, sharp and too much, arriving a full 10 seconds before the man himself. Regional manager. 48. Tall, tan, a haircut that cost more than most people's weekly tips. Employees stiffened when he walked in. Conversations dropped mid-sentence. Gary high-fived Brianna. "Hey, superstar. Place looks great." He walked straight past Sophia, without a glance, though she stood 6 feet away, restocking cups, invisible in a way that seemed rehearsed, like she'd practiced not being seen. He spotted Desmond at the counter. "You're new. Just stick with Brianna. She's the heartbeat of this store." Sophia's hands didn't stop moving. She didn't flinch. She'd heard it before. Probably heard it 100 times. Desmond pushed a little further than he should have. "What about the seasonal menu? Whose idea was the maple cordidu?" Gary grinned, wide and proud, a man taking credit like it was a reflex he didn't even have to think about. "That was mine. Regional initiative, Q3 last year." Desmond nodded slowly. Didn't blink. Sophia's hands paused. 1 second. A cup tilted in her grip. She caught it. Kept going. Because that was the thing about theft dressed up as leadership. It only worked if the person it stole from kept quiet. And Sophia had been keeping quiet for a very long time, long enough that quiet had become its own kind of survival. Day 3, later. End of shift. Desmond offered to help count tips. Brianna shut it down before he'd finished the sentence. "I handle tips. Store policy says equal split, right? Policy is policy. Real life is real life." She said it like a woman reciting a rule she'd invented herself, and now believed, with total conviction. People up front earn the tips. Sophia's support staff. She gets the support staff share. Desmond checked the POS system later, while Brianna stepped away. Brianna and Kayla. 80%. Sophia and 2 others. 20%. Same hours. 1/5 of the money. He photographed the screen. His hands, for the first time in 3 days, were not entirely steady. Day 4. A woman walked in around 2 in the afternoon. Black, mid-50s, hospital lanyard still around her neck, scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. She ordered a vanilla latte and a muffin. Brianna served her the way she served everyone, who didn't earn a heart on that index card. Dead eyes. Flat voice. Wrong name on the cup. Her name was Denise. The cup said Deb. "Excuse me," Denise said, quiet, tired. "My name is Denise. Not Deb." Brianna didn't look up. Same thing. Denise took her coffee. Sat down. Took 1 sip. Stood up and walked out. Desmond followed her. She was on a bench outside, cup still in her hands, staring at it like it had personally disappointed her. "Are you okay?" She looked at him. Her eyes were tired, and not from one bad afternoon. From something longer than that. Something worn smooth by repetition. "I just wanted a cup of coffee in a nice place," she said. "That's all." His chest tightened. "You deserve that." Denise almost smiled. It didn't quite arrive. She threw the cup in the trash can beside the bench, and walked off down the sidewalk, shoulders squared, like a woman used to absorbing small defeats, and moving on, because stopping wasn't an option she'd ever been given. Desmond sat on that bench a long time. Then he took out his phone, and texted Doug Preston. "It's worse than I thought. One more day." Then legal, HR, and the conference room. Friday morning. Every employee present. Doug replied in 4 seconds. "What are you going to do?" Desmond stared at the screen. Somewhere behind him, through the glass, he could hear Brianna's laugh again, bright and careless, aimed at someone who fit the brand. "My job," he typed. And he meant it in a way he hadn't meant anything in a very long time. That evening, still day 4, something happened that Desmond hadn't planned for. He was supposed to just finish the shift. Blend in. Watch. Wait for tomorrow. Except Otis walked in again, later than usual, wool coat and all, and something about the light coming, through the window, that evening, low and gold, and slanting across the tables, made the old man stop halfway to his seat. He looked at Desmond a long moment. Longer than a stranger looks at another stranger. "You," Otis said. "You look like somebody I used to know." Desmond's stomach dropped. Because he'd been careful. Because 4 days of careful, and now an old man in a wool coat was squinting at him like a photograph slowly developing in his mind. "I get that a lot," Desmond said. Which was a lie, and a bad one, and he knew it the second it left his mouth. Otis sat down anyway. Didn't push. Old men, Desmond was learning, don't always need to push. Sometimes they just wait, patient as weather, for the truth to walk over and sit down on its own. Sophia brought the courtier over, both hands, same as always. Otis thanked her, and then his eyes drifted back to Desmond, studying him the way you study a word on the tip of your tongue. "Whitfield," Otis said. Not a question. A door opening. Desmond froze. Because there it was. 4 days of careful, undone in a single syllable, from a man who'd done nothing, but drink cortados, and mind his own business. "You knew my mother," Desmond said. Quiet. It wasn't a guess. It came out of him like something that had been waiting a long time to be said out loud. Otis nodded slowly. "Odessa Whitfield." He said the name like it still meant something to him, all these years later. "I bussed tables at the Windsor Café. Downtown. 1978, 79, somewhere in there." His hands wrapped around the warm cup, and for a moment he wasn't in the flagship store at all. He was somewhere else, somewhere with a green awning, and a swinging kitchen door. "She used to bring you in on Saturdays. Little boy in a clip-on tie. Sat you by the kitchen door every time." "Every time," Desmond said. His voice didn't sound like his own. "I used to feel bad about that." Otis shook his head, slow. "Wasn't my table to assign. Wasn't my call. But I remember thinking, that woman deserves the window. Every single time I thought it. Never said it." He looked up. Didn't have the standing to say it. 19 years old, myself. Scared of losing the only job I had. Desmond sat there. Because what do you say to that? Because 45 years had passed, and here was a man carrying that memory around like a stone in his coat pocket, and he'd never once put it down. "She never told me that," Desmond said. "She never told me anyone noticed. She wouldn't have." Otis's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Your mother wasn't the type to ask anybody to feel sorry for her. She just drank her coffee. Talked to you real quiet. Left a tip every time, even when she couldn't afford one." He looked around the flagship, at the counter, at the chalkboard, at everything Desmond had built out of that exact memory. And then one day she stopped coming in. Windsor closed not long after. "I always wondered what happened to that little boy in the clip-on tie." Desmond looked down at his own hands. Rough now, in ways they hadn't been rough in years, because he'd spent 4 days wiping counters, and hauling boxes, and doing the thing he used to do, before glass offices, and quarterly reports. "He built this," Desmond said. "Because of that kitchen door." Otis went very still. "Because you don't forget a thing like that," Desmond went on, and once he started he couldn't seem to stop, the words tumbling out of him faster than he meant them to. "You don't forget your mother sitting by a swinging door smelling like dishwater, while somebody else got the window. Which stays with you. Which follows you, into every room you ever build for yourself. So I built one, where nobody sits by the kitchen door." That was the whole point. That was the only point. He stopped. Swallowed. Except it didn't work. Not here. Not in the one store that mattered most. Otis studied him for a long moment. "You're him," he said. "Aren't you? The man whose name is on the sign." Desmond didn't answer. Didn't need to. His silence was answer enough, and Otis nodded slowly, like a puzzle piece finally sliding into place after decades of sitting loose in a drawer somewhere. "Why are you dressed like that?" Otis asked. "Why are you working the floor like some kid on his first shift?" "Because I needed to see it," Desmond said. "Not the reports. Not the dashboard. The actual thing. What actually happens, when nobody thinks anybody important is watching." Otis was quiet a long moment. Outside, a car horn sounded somewhere down Colfax, distant and forgettable. Inside, the espresso machine hissed and settled. "And what did you see?" Otis asked. Desmond looked toward the counter. Toward Brianna, laughing at something on her phone. Toward the corner, where the index card sat hidden in a drawer, hearts and X's, flannel man doesn't fit. "I saw the kitchen door," Desmond said. "Just moved somewhere else." Otis nodded slowly, like that answer cost him something to hear. "Your mother would be proud of you for looking," he said. "Might be even prouder if you fix it." "I intend to." "Good." Otis lifted his cup, a small and private toast to nobody, but the two of them. "Tell Sophia I said the cortado's perfect, same as always. Girl's got a gift. Somebody around here ought to notice that properly. Not just me, showing up every morning like a stray cat." "I'm noticing," Desmond said. "Starting tomorrow." He drove home, that night with the radio off. Which he never did. Because usually silence in a car felt too loud, too full of whatever he was avoiding, and tonight the silence felt like the only honest thing left in his day. He kept hearing Otis's voice. "Your mother would be proud of you for looking." Except looking wasn't the same as fixing. And tomorrow was the day he found out which one he actually was. He thought about the index card again. About Flannel Man. About the two-finger bill grab, and the coins scattered across the counter like his money wasn't worth the dignity of a palm to receive it in. He thought about Sophia's notebook, for recipes, for bestsellers, and her name on none of them. He thought about Gary. Gary and his cologne, that arrived before he did. Gary and his easy smile. Gary and something underneath, that smile Desmond hadn't fully named yet, though he could feel its shape the way you feel a splinter, before you find where it's lodged. At home, he couldn't sit still. Which was unusual for him. He was a man who'd learned patience the hard way, 23 years of it, welding and waiting, and watching numbers climb one careful percentage point at a time. But that night he paced his kitchen like something was chasing him, and maybe something was, because at 2:30 in the morning he gave up on sleep entirely, and called Doug one more time, though he knew Doug would be asleep, though he left a voicemail instead. "I need everything on Gary Bennett," he said, into the phone, his own voice sounding strange to him in the dark kitchen. "Employment history. Direct reports. And pull the HR file on Brianna Cole. Emergency contact. All of it. I want it, before I walk into that store tomorrow." He hung up. Stood at the window a long time, watching a city that had no idea what was about to happen inside one of its coffee shops. Then, at 4:30, he drove back to the flagship. Because the store didn't open until 5:30, which gave him 1 hour. Alone. In the back office. The alley door still didn't have a camera. He noticed that again on his way in, the sky still the color of a bruise healing. He noticed it, because he was noticing everything now. Because that's what happens, when you stop trusting your own house. You start checking every lock. Every hinge. Every shadow that used to just be a shadow. He used his corporate login, masked through the IT system, as a routine audit check, something Doug had set up the night before with 2 clicks, and a look on his face that said he didn't love this plan, but wasn't going to say so twice. No fingerprints. No alerts. Just access. Desmond sat down in the manager's office, if you could call it that. Windowless. Barely big enough for a desk, a filing cabinet, and a printer that looked like it hadn't been serviced in a decade. The chair squeaked when he sat. Squeaked again when he leaned forward. The desk smelled like old coffee, and dust, the particular dust that settles into a room nobody has cared about in a long time. He started with the tip distribution records. 12 months. Every weekly payout logged digitally, through the POS system, clean and searchable, which meant somebody could have caught this in an afternoon. Except nobody had looked. Which was its own kind of answer. He pulled the numbers into a spreadsheet on his phone, and ran the math twice, because the first time his hands were shaking too much to trust it. Brianna and Kayla's combined weekly tips averaged $410. Across all 40 Ember and Oak locations, the average 2-person front-of-house tip split was $95. 4 times higher. Not twice. Not a little more. 4 times. Sophia's tip share had dropped every single month for 9 consecutive months. $62 a week down to $11. The exact same 9 months Brianna had been on staff. Desmond sat back. The chair squeaked. He didn't move. 9 months. $11. A woman who showed up at 5 in the morning to steam milk for a man named Otis, because she remembered how he liked it. He screenshotted every page. His thumb was steady now. Whatever had been shaking in him had gone somewhere else. Somewhere colder. Next, Gary Bennett's quarterly innovation reports. Pulled straight from the regional shared drive, because apparently nobody thought to lock that either. 4 regional menu initiatives submitted, over the past 14 months. Each one credited to Gary as the originator. Harvest Maple Cordideau. Submitted October, last year. Summer Peach Iced Tea. Submitted June. Autumn Spice Latte. Submitted December. Banana Pecan Bread. Submitted March. Desmond opened the photographs he'd taken of Sophia's notebook. Page by page. Date by date. Harvest Maple Cordideau, Sophia's entry, August. 2 months before Gary's submission. Summer Peach Iced Tea, Sophia's entry, April. 2 months before Gary. Autumn Spice Latte, Sophia's entry, October. 2 months before Gary. Banana Pecan Bread, Sophia's entry, January. 2 months before Gary. Every recipe. Every single one. Created by Sophia. Passed by Derek. Submitted upward by Gary as his own. Same gap. Every time. 2 months. Which was long enough to look like independent development. And short enough to ride her creativity in real time, like a man standing behind a woman, and stealing the words right out of her mouth, before she finished the sentence. Desmond leaned back. The chair squeaked a 3rd time, and this time he almost laughed, except there was nothing funny in the room. 4 ideas. 4 bestsellers. All hers. All stolen, twice over, once by the manager, who passed them up the chain, and once by the regional director, who took the credit at the top. He opened the employee complaint log next. Because if this was a pattern, patterns leave paper trails. And paper trails don't lie, even when people do. 3 formal complaints filed by Sophia Reyes, over the past 18 months. Complaint number 1. Schedule fairness. Sophia requested rotation into peak hour shifts. Status, reviewed. No adjustment needed. Current scheduling reflects operational needs. Signed, Gary Bennett. Complaint number 2. Tip distribution. Sophia reported unequal tip allocation and requested a transparent audit. Status, reviewed. Tip policy is at store-level discretion. No action required. Signed, Gary Bennett. Complaint number 3. Credit for menu contributions. Sophia requested formal recognition for the Harvest Maple Cordidu and 3 other recipes she originated. Status, reviewed. Menu development is a regional function. Individual contributions are noted internally. No further action. Signed, Gary Bennett. 3 complaints. 3 dismissals. Same signature. Same dead end, every time, like a hallway, that only ever led back to the same locked door. Desmond opened one final file. Brianna Cole's employee record. He scrolled past the hire date. Past the W-4. Past the direct deposit information nobody ever reads twice. Stopped at the emergency contact field. Emergency contact, Gary Bennett. Relationship, uncle. He exhaled. Slow. Controlled. The way a man breathes, when the last piece of something ugly finally clicks into place, and he wishes, for one brief and useless second, that it hadn't. Uncle. Because that explained everything, didn't it? Gary shielded Brianna. Brianna ran the floor like a small kingdom. Kayla followed Brianna, because that was easier than not following her. Derek passed Sophia's recipes upward, without ever putting her name on anything, maybe out of laziness, maybe out of fear of Gary, maybe both. And Sophia filed complaints, and Gary buried them, one after another, in a filing cabinet nobody else had a key to. A closed loop. A machine built to protect itself. And nobody outside that loop had ever thought to ask who built it, or why it never seemed to break. Desmond closed the laptop. Stood up. Walked to the break room, because he needed to see the jar again. Needed to hold it, just once, before he did what came next. The ceramic tip jar was still on the shelf. He picked it up. Turned it over. On the bottom, in small handwriting, faded but legible. For the team. S.R. Sophia Reyes. She'd painted this jar herself. For the team. And the team she'd made it for had emptied it, shelved it, and taped a sticky note to the front, that told everyone to go, through the person who was stealing from them. Desmond set the jar back down, gently, like it was evidence. Because it was. He pulled out his phone. Called Doug. Legal and HR. Are they confirmed for tomorrow? Confirmed. Conference rooms booked. Every flagship employee will be there at 8 a.m., a pause on the line. One more thing. I want the big screen set up. I'm going to show them something. What are you going to show them? Desmond looked at the jar one more time. The truth. He hung up. Stood in the break room alone, surrounded by bags of coffee beans, and the faint smell of bleach drifting in, from somewhere behind the espresso machine. Then he turned off the light, and walked out. Friday morning, before dawn, before the meeting, before any of it, Desmond sat alone in his kitchen, with a legal pad in front of him, and a cold cup of coffee he hadn't touched in an hour. He thought about calling his mother. Which was foolish, because she'd been gone 6 years, and grief doesn't care how foolish an impulse is, before it arrives anyway. He thought about what she'd say, if she could see the index card. Flannel man. Doesn't fit. She'd probably laugh first. She always laughed first, even at the things that hurt, because laughing first was how she'd survived being seated by that kitchen door for as long as she had. Then she'd go quiet. Then she'd say the thing she always said, the thing that had built an entire company, without either of them realizing it at the time. Doesn't matter who they think fits, baby. Matters who you let sit down. Desmond closed the legal pad. Stood up. Walked to the window of his apartment, the city still dark outside, streetlights holding their small orange circles against the black. Somewhere across that city, in a conference room he hadn't seen the inside of in years, 14 plastic chairs were waiting. Fluorescent lights were waiting. Brianna was waiting, though she didn't know it yet, still asleep somewhere, still certain the world worked the way she'd built it to work behind that register. Gary was waiting too, wherever he slept, cologne bottle probably already sitting on a dresser, ready for another day of walking, into a room like he owned it. And Sophia. Sophia was probably already awake, 5:15 habit too deep to break even on a day off, thinking about something nobody had asked her to think about, creating something nobody was going to credit her for. Not for much longer, Desmond thought. He looked at his reflection in the dark window glass. Not the CEO. Not yet. Still Henry Walsh, in his mind, at least until the sun came up, and the gray polo came off for the last time. He thought about the bell above the door. How it never announced anything on its own. How it just marked the moment, and let whatever walked through decide what that moment meant. Tomorrow, he decided, standing there in the dark, with a cold cup of coffee, and a legal pad full of a company's failures written in his own shaking hand, he was going to walk back, through that door. Not as Henry. Not as a name on a letterhead, 14 floors removed, from anything real. As himself. As the boy, who used to sit by the kitchen door. As the man, who built the window seat, and then forgot, for 3 long years, to check whether anyone was actually allowed to sit in it. He picked up his phone. Texted Doug one last time, before trying, uselessly, to sleep. 8 a.m. Don't let anyone leave that room until it's finished. Doug's reply came back almost instantly, like the man had been sitting awake, with his phone in his hand, waiting. It'll be finished. Get some rest, Desmond. Tomorrow's a long day. He didn't get much rest. But he did, finally, close his eyes. And in the last clear thought, before sleep took him, he saw Otis. An old man in a wool coat, sitting in a corner of a coffee shop, carrying a memory for 45 years, because nobody had ever given him the standing to put it down. Tomorrow, Desmond thought, drifting under. Tomorrow, somebody finally gets to put it down. Friday morning. 8 o'clock. The flagship was closed to customers. Which felt strange to walk past. A hand-lettered sign taped to the glass door, closed for staff training, back at noon, and behind it, through the window, 14 plastic chairs arranged in careful rows under fluorescent lights, that buzzed just loud enough to notice, if the room went quiet. It went quiet often that morning. Brianna Cole sat in the second row, phone in hand, thumb moving fast, annoyed at the mandatory meeting the way you're annoyed at whether you didn't check the forecast for. Kayla sat beside her, chewing gum, whispering something that made Brianna smirk, quick and careless, the same smirk she wore behind the register, when she thought nobody, who mattered was watching. Gary Bennett sat in the front row. Legs crossed. Arm draped across the empty chair beside him, the posture of a man, who believed, without ever having to think about it, that he was the most important person in any room he walked into. His cologne arrived a full 10 seconds, before he did, same as always, and settled over the front rows like whether nobody had asked for. Derek Ford sat near the aisle, 3 rows back, a legal pad on his knee, that he kept flipping open, and closed, the nervous habit of a man, who suspected, somewhere underneath his own denial, that this meeting wasn't about a training module at all. Sophia Reyes sat in the back. Hands folded. Shoulders forward. She didn't know why she'd been asked to attend a meeting, that clearly wasn't about her, because nothing in 4 years had ever really been about her. She expected nothing. Nothing was what this company had trained her to expect. At 8:02, the door opened. Desmond Whitfield walked in. Not in a suit. The same worn jacket. The same baseball cap. The same scuffed shoes, from 4 days behind a counter, that had taught him more than 3 years behind a desk ever had. He walked to the front of the room. No notes. No laptop. Just him. Brianna squinted. Something flickered behind her eyes, recognition trying to climb up, through disbelief, one slow rung at a time. Kayla tilted her head, gum stopping mid-chew, jaw frozen halfway open. Gary uncrossed his legs. Derek's pen stopped moving entirely. Desmond let the silence hold. 5 seconds. 7. Long enough that the fluorescent buzz became the loudest thing in the room. Then he spoke. 4 days ago, I walked into this store, and ordered a courtadou, and a slice of banana bread. Brianna's smile, halfway formed out of habit, froze in place. The 2 cashiers behind the counter looked at me. A black man in a worn jacket. And decided I didn't belong. He let that sit a beat. One of them told me to get my black coffee, and go sit on the curb, where I belong. Brianna's face drained. All at once. Color leaving her cheeks, her lips, her ears, like someone had pulled a plug she didn't know existed. The other one said I crawled out of a trash can. Said my card was probably stolen. The room went silent. Not the comfortable kind. My name is Desmond Whitfield. I founded this company. I built this store. I welded the first coffee cart in my mother's garage 23 years ago. Kayla's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Gary went very still. Desmond pulled the index card from his jacket pocket. Held it up. Didn't need to raise his voice, because a room this quiet carries a whisper just fine. This was inside the register drawer. He turned it slowly, letting the hearts show, then the X's. Hearts for the customers you decided fit the brand. X's for the ones you decided didn't. He read, from it, flat and even, letting each name land on its own. Old Guy Otis. Just sits. Lady with 3 kids. Messy. He paused. Flannel man. Doesn't fit. He looked up. Flannel man was me. You put an X next to the man, who built everything you're standing inside of. A sharp inhale from the back row. 2 employees in the middle exchanged a look, the kind that says I knew something was wrong, and I said nothing anyway. Desmond turned toward the screen behind him, and the room's attention followed like it had no choice. 12 months of tip distribution data, projected large enough to read, from every seat. Brianna Cole and Kayla Price. 80% of all pooled tips. A pause, letting the number sit in the room like smoke. Sophia Reyes and 2 back-of-house employees. 20%. Same hours. 1/5 of the money. Next slide. Gary's quarterly reports on the left. Sophia's notebook photographs on the right, dates circled in red. 4 recipes. Harvest maple courtadou. Summer peach iced tea. Autumn spice latte. Banana pecan bread. Every one created by Sophia Reyes. He let his eyes move, slow and deliberate, until they found Derek, then Gary. Every one handed off by Derek Ford, without her name attached. Every one submitted by Gary Bennett, as his own regional initiative. Sophia's notebook dates predate Gary's reports by 2 months. Every single time. Derek's pen fell out of his hand. He didn't reach for it. Gary's jaw tightened. His hand gripped his knee, knuckles going pale. I can explain. I'm not finished. Desmond's voice hadn't risen. It had dropped. And that was worse. Final slide. 3 complaint records, each one stamped, with the same outcome. Schedule fairness. Tip distribution. Recipe credit. All filed by Sophia. All dismissed. He let the last word hang in the buzzing light. All signed by the same name. He turned to Gary directly now. No screen between them. Just two men, and a room full of witnesses. Gary Bennett. The same Gary Bennett listed as Brianna Cole's emergency contact. A beat. Relationship, uncle. Gary's face didn't drain the way Brianna's had. It hardened. Eyes darting, calculating, a man checking for exits, and finding none. Because there weren't any left. Because the room he'd built to protect himself had just been turned inside out in front of the only people who could actually see it clearly. Desmond turned to Sophia. She was in the back row, where they'd always kept her. Back of the room, back of the schedule, back of the line. Her hands were still folded, but her spine had straightened, an inch at a time, over the last 3 minutes. Sophia. You created the harvest maple cordido. The summer peach iced tea. The autumn spice latte. The banana pecan bread. He paused. The same bread I was eating when your colleagues told me I didn't belong in this store. Silence. Total. I owe you an apology. Not for what they did. For not being here to see it. For being 14 floors up, while this was happening 14 feet from the counter. His voice thinned, just slightly, the only crack he allowed himself in front of the room. That's on me. Sophia pressed her lips together. Her eyes went bright. Not spilling. Not performing. Just bright, in the particular way that eyes go bright when something true finally lands, after years of waiting for it. She nodded once. Slow. Not agreement. Acknowledgement. I knew what I was worth. I was waiting for someone else to see it. Brianna stared at the table. Kayla hadn't moved in a full minute. Gary was looking at the wall now, jaw locked, like refusing to meet Desmond's eyes might somehow undo the last 5 minutes. Desmond straightened. His voice returned to steel. Now. Let me tell you what happens next. He didn't raise his voice for what came next. Didn't need to. Every person in that room was already holding their breath, the kind of held breath that makes 14 plastic chairs feel like the smallest space in the world. He picked up 4 folders from the table beside him. Plain manila. No labels. He'd prepared them the night before, one for each name that was about to change meaning inside this company forever. He opened the first, and set it in front of Brianna Cole. Brianna. You're terminated. Effective immediately. He let that land before continuing. Not for being rude to a customer. Though that alone would be enough. He tapped the index card against the table, once, a small sound that filled the whole room. You're terminated for maintaining a documented system of discriminatory customer profiling. For manipulating the tip pool to divert 80% of shared gratuities to yourself and one other employee. And for creating a hostile work environment for your colleagues. Specifically the ones who didn't look like you. Didn't talk like you. Didn't fit a brand you decided to build inside a company that was never yours to reshape. Brianna didn't look up. Her fingers locked together on the table, knuckles white. Her lips moved, just slightly, but nothing came out. The girl who always had something to say had nothing left to say. He set the second folder in front of Kayla Price. Kayla. Same terms. Terminated for participation in the same system. You co-maintained the profiling list. You participated in the tip manipulation. And you stood behind that counter and called a paying customer, me, a thief to his face. Because of the color of his skin. Kayla's eyes were red. Chin trembling. She reached for the folder, but didn't open it. Just held it, like she didn't know what else to do with her hands. Desmond turned next to Derek Ford, who was already halfway out of his seat, as if standing might somehow soften what was coming. "Derek. Sit down." Derek sat. "You're not terminated. But you are removed from this store, effective today, and placed on a written final warning across the company." Desmond opened the third folder, and set it in front of him. "You knew about the customer complaints. You called them noise. You took a recipe, from a woman on your own team, and passed it up the chain, without her name on it, more than once, because it was easier than doing your job the right way. That's not malice, Derek. That's neglect. But neglect is how rot like this survives. So you'll spend the next 6 months at our lowest performing location, under direct oversight, proving to me you understand the difference between managing numbers and managing people. If you don't, there won't be a second chance." Derek's throat worked. He nodded, once, and said nothing, because there was nothing left worth saying. Desmond turned, finally, to Gary Bennett. Gary sat perfectly still. Jaw set. Eyes fixed on a point somewhere above Desmond's head, the posture of a man who'd decided that if he didn't look directly at the fire, maybe it wasn't really burning. Desmond set the fourth folder down. Didn't slide it. Placed it, deliberate, final. "Gary. You're terminated for falsifying intellectual property claims. For original recipes, created by Sophia Reyes, submitted under your name in quarterly reports to corporate." He paused, letting each phrase land like a nail. "You're terminated for suppressing 3 formal employee complaints. Complaints that came to your desk, and died there. Because the person they were filed against was your niece." He let that word sit in the room a moment longer than it needed to. "And you're terminated for building a system of protection around an employee, who was actively discriminating against customers. In a store, that was founded on the principle that everyone deserves a seat." Gary's nostrils flared. His hand twitched against his knee. For one long second, Desmond thought the man might actually speak, might try to explain, deflect, minimize, the way he'd minimized every single complaint that had ever crossed his desk. Instead, Gary looked around the room. Every pair of eyes was on him. The employees he'd charmed, high-fived, joked with over the past 2 years. Watching. Not one of them looked away. Gary picked up the folder. Stood. Walked out without a word. The door clicked shut behind him. His cologne lingered another 30 seconds. Then that was gone too. Desmond turned to the remaining employees. 10 people now, not 11, the room feeling both smaller, and somehow easier to breathe in. Some had worked at this store for years. Some had seen what was happening, and said nothing, because saying something had never once seemed to work. Some hadn't seen it at all, because the system had been built, carefully, to keep it invisible to anyone not paying close attention. What happened in this store wasn't just about 3 people, Desmond said. It was about a system that let them operate. A system I built. Or didn't build well enough. He looked around the room, slow, meeting eyes one at a time. That changes today. He clicked to a new screen. 4 bullet points. Simple. Clear. Effective immediately, across every location. 1. Transparent digital tip pooling. Every employee sees every dollar, in real time. No one person controls the distribution. If you work the hours, you earn the tips. Period. 2. Recipe and innovation credit. Any employee who contributes a menu item gets their name on it. On the board. On the app. On the marketing. You'll receive a royalty percentage for the first 12 months, and priority consideration for promotion. Your ideas are yours. Nobody takes them again. 3. An independent reporting channel. Complaints no longer go through your regional manager. They go to a third-party firm that reports directly to me. Not to Derek. Not to the next Gary. To me. 4. Quarterly undercover audits. Every 90 days, someone from this company, me, Doug, a VP, someone you won't recognize, walks into a store, as a customer. No warning. We'll see what your customers see. If it matches our values, good. If it doesn't, we'll know. And we'll act. He let the screen sit. Let them read it twice. Then he turned to Sophia. She was still in the back row. Still quiet. But something had shifted, the smallest change, like a window cracked open, after years of being sealed shut. Her chin sat a half-inch higher than it had 10 minutes ago. Sophia. His voice changed again, the same shift the room had felt during the reveal. Steel giving way to something warmer underneath. I'm offering you the position of Regional Innovation Lead. You'll oversee seasonal menu development for every store we have. Your recipes will carry your name, retroactively. Your salary will reflect your contribution, backdated to your first recipe submission. He slid a folder across the table. Thicker than the others. Heavier. Sophia stood. Walked to the front. She didn't rush. Every step deliberate, the same way she moved behind the counter, no wasted motion, no performance for anyone watching. She opened the folder. Inside, a formal offer letter. A back paycheck for 18 months of stolen tips, calculated to the cent. A new name badge. Sophia Reyes. Regional Innovation Lead. She ran her thumb across the badge. Slow. The way you touch something you've imagined 1,000 times, but never quite believed you'd actually hold. Her lips pressed together. Eyes bright. Not spilling. Not performing. Just bright. She looked at Desmond. Didn't speak at first. Then, quiet. Steady. Thank you. 2 words. Not grateful the way people are grateful for a gift. Grateful the way people are grateful, when something stolen is finally returned. Nobody clapped. Nobody needed to. The silence in that room said more than applause ever could. Sophia turned and walked to the break room. Came back a moment later, carrying the ceramic tip jar. She walked past the conference room, through the door, onto the store floor. Set the jar on the counter, right beside the register, right where every customer could see it. Peeled off the sticky note. All tips go through Brianna. Dropped it in the trash. She looked at the empty store, chairs stacked, lights on, the espresso machine humming softly, waiting. Straightened her apron. And waited for the doors to open. 3 months later, the Denver flagship of Ember and Oak Coffee didn't look different, from the outside. Same brick facade. Same glass front. Same logo above the door. But inside, everything had changed. The first thing customers saw was a chalkboard by the entrance, hand-lettered, updated weekly in Sophia's handwriting. This season's menu, created by our team. 4 recipes, each one with a name beside it. Not a corporate code. A person. Harvest Maple Cordidu, Sophia Reyes, Denver flagship. Winter Cinnamon Cold Brew, Maria Torres, Salt Lake City. Spring Honey Lavender Latte, Deshaun Williams, Albuquerque. Summer Peach Iced Tea, Sophia Reyes, Denver flagship. 2 of the 4 were Sophia's. Nobody had to steal them anymore. They came from a woman with a notebook and a talent that 4 years of silence had never once managed to kill. The team behind the counter was different too. Desmond hadn't gutted the staff. He'd removed the rot, and let the rest grow. 3 new hires filled the gaps, and Sophia had a say in every one of them. Her only requirement, stated plainly in every interview. They have to actually like people. All people. Not just the ones who look good on Instagram. One of those new hires was Denise Carter. The nurse from the bench. The one called Deb by a cashier, who couldn't be bothered, who'd walked out, without finishing her coffee. Desmond had tracked her down, through the customer feedback form nobody had ever answered. Called her personally. Told her what had changed. Then asked a question she hadn't expected. Would you ever want to work here? Denise had laughed, the kind that sits right on the edge of crying. You're serious? You told me all you wanted was a nice place, where nobody looked at you like you didn't deserve to be there. Desmond's voice had gone quiet on the phone that day. I want to build that place. And I think you'd be better at it than anyone I could find off a job board. Denise started the following Monday. She worked the front register, the exact position Brianna had once guarded like a throne. She greeted every customer the way Sophia had taught the whole new team. Eye contact. Full name on the cup. Drink handed over with both hands. Otis came back too. He'd stopped for a while, after Brianna started slow servicing him, making him wait, ignoring his order, until it wasn't worth the wait anymore. He'd told Sophia once, quiet, resigned, that maybe it was time to find another place. Then, one Tuesday morning, 6:45, same as always, Otis walked through the door. Wool coat. Slow steps. He stood at the counter, and looked around, almost checking whether it was safe to trust again. Denise looked up and smiled. Oat milk cordido, extra warm. Otis, right? Otis stared at her. How do you know my name? Sophia told us about our VIPs. A grin. You're at the top of the list. Otis laughed. Short. Surprised. The sound of a man who'd forgotten, somewhere along the way, what it felt like to be expected somewhere. He sat at his window table. The same one Brianna's index card had said he didn't deserve. When he left, he dropped a $5 bill into the ceramic tip jar. Otis tapped the rim twice. The way you knock on a door you're glad is open again. See you tomorrow, Sophia. See you tomorrow, Otis. Desmond visited the flagship once a month now. Always through the front door. Always as a customer first. On this visit, he noticed something new on the wall beside the chalkboard. A framed black and white photograph. A young man in his 20s standing beside a steel coffee cart in a garage, grinning like he just built something that mattered. Below it, a small plaque. Everyone deserves a seat. Desmond Whitfield, founder. He asked Sophia about it. Who put that up? She shrugged, the same shrug she'd given him 100 times before, except lighter now, easier, like a weight had finally shifted somewhere underneath it. The team. They thought customers should know where this place came from. Desmond ordered a banana bread. Sat at the same corner table, where he'd frozen mid-bite 3 months earlier. Denise brought his cordido over, both hands, the way she'd been taught, the way it should have always been done. Otis was at the window table. Sophia was in the back. He could smell cardamom drifting, from somewhere near the ovens. He bit into the banana bread. This time, he finished it. Every bite. Slow. Unhurried. A man sitting in the exact seat that had once made him freeze, tasting nothing but what it actually was. Good bread, made by good hands, in a store that finally matched the words printed on its own cups. He thought about his mother, briefly, the way you think about someone whose absence has finally stopped aching quite so sharp. He thought she would have liked this corner table. He thought she might have even liked the window one, if she'd lived long enough to walk in, and simply take it, no permission required, no waitress deciding for her, where she belonged. Outside, the afternoon light moved across Colfax Avenue the way it always had, indifferent to what had changed inside one small store on one particular corner. But something had changed. Not the bricks. Not the glass. Something quieter than that, something you could only really feel, if you'd been the man standing at the counter 4 months ago, waiting 15 long seconds for anyone at all to notice he existed. Sophia came by his table, before her shift ended, wiping her hands on her apron, the new badge catching the afternoon light. "Everything all right, boss?" Desmond looked around the store. At Denise laughing with a customer. At Otis lingering, over his second cup, in no hurry to leave, because for the first time in months nobody was hoping he would. "Everything's exactly right," he said. And for the first time in 3 years, he believed it completely.